wish I knew.
Welcome back to My Husband is My Best Friend.
Faith Evans speaks on the beginning of her career and not getting writing credits for Biggie's One More Chance remix.
Well, obviously, with the you're referring to with my first album, right? With the Lady of Soul, right?
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that one in particular for me felt really special because I was so new. I was a new artist, and I just to see that my music got that recognition from fans and from the industry. That felt really good, especially with all the stuff that was going on at the time. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, well, clearly somebody appreciates my music, and that's something that Cheryl always kind of reminds people of. I remember she used to be like, "You think people gonna like my music?" I didn't know, how successful or not it was going to be, when I was making it. So that was a big deal to me. And I mean,
Yeah.
and at this point, I look back and it still means the same thing to me now, that it did then, because it was in that moment in time, it could have been very different. I
Right.
think if it, now I might not have won the award because things are so based on social media and people's opinion there, you know what I mean?
Right.
And who has the most followers and this and that and the third. So I mean, it happened when it was supposed to. So I'm
Yeah.
grateful.
And in that particular situation, right, the label didn't help you get to the award ceremony. You did that on your own.
Oh yeah. Me and Cheryl were, I was adamant, because at that time it was like sort of I don't know at what point, like timeline wise, but it was definitely during the quote unquote East Coast, West Coast stuff.
Right.
And I was pregnant, and, I guess they felt like, I don't know if it was supposed to be a safety concern, but I never felt that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, I'm still going. I'll get my own flight. And Theo, who used to be on the radio out here in LA, he actually helped me get the dress, and I waddled my big pregnant self on up there. And I was like, wow, I had no way I thought I would win, but I was still going to go because I was being acknowledged. You know what I mean? And to be acknowledged in the category with people like a Mariah Carey and other great artists, I was like, well, I don't care. I'm going. If they, you know what I mean? If they're acknowledging me, I'm going to show up. Had no idea I was going to win. That just took the cake.
So, do you watch any reality TV or any shows? Are you familiar with The Voice and just heard Ari Camille do Love Like This?
I did tune in. Hey, Rob Milton. Hey, Quan Grant. Um, I actually I don't often watch the competition shows.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like usually streaming, like, binge watching some series or something on a streaming network. But I did tune in to see her perform because I had to clear the, usage of the song. So
Okay.
I knew it was gonna be used, yeah. So I did make sure I tuned
So
in.
I always had a question because I think about you every time that I hear your music on TV. What's that process? How does that work when they want to use your song?
Well, typically either if you have a publishing deal or an admin deal with somebody, typically they'll be contacted by a clearinghouse or sometimes directly by a label. And then they'll, give them all the details and basically offer what they think their share should be. And of course, as you being one of the owners of the work that they're trying to use, you kind of get to say yay or nay, or I want this much, or I want that much.
Yeah. I remember watching Euphoria, and there was a really, because I know, isn't it more money the longer that it plays or the extension?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Hmm.
I was watching Euphoria, and your song Love Like This was on for quite some time because it played out through this whole scene that was developing. And I remember tweeting, I was like, cha-ching, Faith Evans, because it was like so long. That was nice. I love that. Yeah. So when it comes to the writing part, what what are you more enamored with, the creation and the writing part or the actually performing part of it?
Mm, um, you mean perform? performing live or singing it in the studio?
Well, that too. Like, what do you prefer? Like, where do you
Well,
get your
I, I
Zazazoo from?
I think I probably love them equally,
Hmm.
but just in different ways and,
Okay,
for different reasons. But at the same time, I've obviously spent a heck of more time in a recording studio than performance,
right.
because for a lot of, like there were tours back then that, that I did not do. And being a parent has always, being a mother, has always kind of played a factor in what I did or did not choose to do, in addition to sometimes the money not being right, but,
Hmm.
um, yeah, I definitely not lost my passion for the studio. I love creating. I
Hmm.
just at this point in my life don't have that time. I got literally like 4.5 hours a day to myself between Ryder going to school and Ryder coming home and us having to do homework and then him having to go to whatever activities, you know what I mean? So I
Right,
just don't, my life right now, just that's not even possible. But I still
right.
love to. Like if I had a week or 2 weeks free, you better believe I would certainly be in the studio for a few of those days. Just I have so many unfinished songs, that I probably did have a project, or I probably could have a project or two if I went back and went back to those things and fixed them up and packaged them. But that time is just not right now.
I know one of the ones that you have sitting on your shelf is that song "Late at Night." I love that song. I really wish that I had that in my
And you
rotation.
know what?
I feel.
That song was recorded when I was on Bad Boy, so I'm pretty sure that's in that archive somewhere. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? I'm pretty sure.
Hmm. Yeah. So, how is the family? How's everybody?
Everybody's doing very well, thank you. Ryder just turned 18 a few weeks ago. China just turned 32. CJ and Josh is doing his DJ thing. CJ is
Hmm.
traveling all over the place, so they're doing really good.
Hmm. I've always wanted you. This is my own personal want for you. I've always wanted you to get a hold of like one of those Disney movies and do one of those songs, kind of like a Regina
Hmm.
Bell in a Whole New World. I kind of wanted you to get, that type of music to be able to sing, so it's like timeless forever. Not that your music is not timeless forever, but that music has a way of crossing over and
Right, right.
being around for platinum time.
Well, hopefully this next project that I want to do will be able to transcend the what I'm not well the what is it that the subgenre that legend artists are putting if we're on R&B radio, adult contemporary,
Hmm.
that will
Yeah.
transcend all of that R&B, all of that. Just I want to do something that's going to be global.
Okay, so you talk because what I had in mind is like a We Are the World, but for like
Get out of my
autism.
head. Get out of my head.
I love it.
Mhm.
Another thing that's on my wish list too is there was a point in time. I don't remember exactly when it was, but not too long ago, you were in association again with I'll Be Sure. Something came up and he was honoring you or you were honoring him or something had happened. And I remember thinking it would be nice for them to come full circle and to create a song together since that was how you got your start. Like in like actually being in the studio and making music, and creating that way. It would be nice for you and Al to do something together. I would
Well,
like to see
Al and I keep in touch. I mean, he's very dear to my heart. I don't know if you're referring to, he was at the Soul Train honor thing a
that
few
part.
years
Yeah,
back.
that's what it
Yeah,
was.
but I mean, we keep in touch. That's like I call him Grandpa, but I call him and Christopher Williams Grandpa just because, But that's like my big bro. I mean, I just always check on him and make sure he's doing good. And I know he's been dealing, with his platform with transplants for all. What up, Camille? And his mom. He's been taking care of his mom through when she was in the hospital. So yeah, I just always try and keep in touch because he has a special place in my heart. He was the first person to give me a check regularly for showing
And
up to
you
the studio.
And you technically never worked a conventional job, right?
Well, very, very, very briefly, I worked at IGA Supermarket in Hillside. That was probably like,
Okay.
as a teenager until we got fired for giving all our cousins groceries. I did the same thing at ShopRite for probably like 5 months. And yeah, that's it.
That's so hood of you, Faith Evans. So
That
hood
was
of
in
you.
high school though, yeah. But look, when I got pregnant with China and dropped out of college, I had no idea what I was going to do. Like, I'm like, oh my God, what am I thinking? Like, because you ain't in school in my grandmother's house, you got to have a job.
Right.
Like, what is I'm going to do?
So what kind of feedback did you get when making the decision that you weren't going to go back to school? What was the family saying to you?
It wasn't positive. It
Yeah.
wasn't positive. But
Did you have anybody back then that believed in what you were doing in the direction that you were going?
um, well, here's the thing. I don't, with regard to me deciding to leave school, it wasn't that. It was because I got pregnant.
Yeah.
And her dad told me he wanted me to move to California and we's gonna get married. I just was like, it all sounded way more fun than what I was doing. So, like, okay, I'm going to California. That's really, it wasn't about a career at all because I didn't know what I was going to do. I wasn't out there with them like trying to get a deal. I was already very proficient at what I did creatively, but
Hmm.
I didn't necessarily have a placement for all of those things. I just was, still singing everywhere I could and still going to that same studio in the Bronx where I learned how to produce myself. But I was still, school was my main focus, at that time. So when I got pregnant and said I ain't going back, yeah, it was like, what? But I probably a few months later, I was on the plane coming to coming to LA.
I think at this point, because of all that and I can't, of course, tell the university what to do, but I do believe that Fordham University deserves to they need to give you an honorary
You know what?
doctorate.
That would be nice. That would be
Yeah.
really nice. I didn't do so bad at the end of my first year. Actually, I was disappointed in my GPA because I got my first D from one of my professors at Fordham, and I know it was an amazing paper. That was like that's one of my great things to do is write,
Hmm.
like one of the things that I'm really good at. And it was theology class, and of course he was a Jesuit priest,
Hmm.
and my paper was based on the thinking that you can't necessarily say if someone doesn't believe in what you believe as a Christian that they're going to hell because they,
Mm.
and I'm like, what about, basically the point of my paper was like, what about a baby or a child that's born into, for example, a religion that all they learn from birth or from childhood is to take and to fight,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
because their lives depend on it. My argument was that I believe God knows your heart. And
Yeah.
I don't believe that if that child, in that particular situation, I don't think they would go to hell. That's just not my belief.
Right.
And he gave me a D, but I know my paper was really, really good. So it probably affected my GPA because it was like a really big paper. It might have even
Yeah.
been like the final, exam, but yeah, nonetheless. Shout out to Fordham. They did give me a scholarship though, so
Yeah, they did.
they ain't so bad.
Are there any songs that you didn't get your recognition for putting your pen to?
One More Chance, the remix. I
Mm.
mean, even though the concept and the song was already, a record, but
Hmm.
the hook on the One More Chance,
Hmm.
that whole part, I
Hmm.
definitely arranged that. And I remember one time, when I mentioned it to Papa, he was like, "Oh, we got to fix it," but I just never, I just looked at it like it's a big song. I ain't really gonna trip.
Yeah.
But that's
And,
not, just a small part of that record. But
and what
not
a lot of
really.
people don't know is like that whole first album of yours, that whole. So I had a conversation with Redman one time, and that's your homie, and he didn't know because he said something. We were discussing "Love Don't Live Here Anymore,"
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't know that there were two different versions. And like this was a while ago.
Oh,
I
you mean
mean, I'm
like
talking years
the
and years
one
ago.
with me and then the one with me and Mary?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't know that you couldn't get that anymore. And he was like, "What do you mean you can't get that anymore?" I was like, "You can't get it anymore. You can't buy it anywhere because they destroyed those
I
copies."
much prefer the version with Mary.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, I do like that. Yeah. That's and you didn't receive royalties off that one for, was it like 10 years?
What do you mean
Off the
royalty?
album because they had to destroy the presses.
Well, that's not just necessarily a factor in someone receiving royalties. I mean,
Okay.
not just that one record, the overall body of work. Like, there's all you got to recoup. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? First,
Yeah.
before you see any royalties. So
Yeah.
recoupment is certainly not just dependent on that particular song. You know.
Okay. What
I
was it?
mean,
What
now
was
whether
the
or
first?
not that delayed something in addition
Uh
to becoming recouped, that's another story. It's possible.
huh.
It's possible.
Okay. What was the first indicator to you that you were selling records?
Be sure to
Hmm.
like, share, and subscribe.
Selling records?
So like you put this body of work out, you release your album, and you're out in the world, preparing, to do promo and stuff for it. When do you know that your stuff is actually making noise in the
Well, for
streets?
me, being an artist and a writer, that would have probably been my next quarterly distribution from my performing rights organization, that where you can see how where it's being played on the radio. That's not really so much with sales though.
Hmm.
I mean, but it was certainly very, it was only a few months when until I had either a gold single or a gold album or both. So that's usually a good indicator of
Hmm.
things like
Yeah.
that. But I would
Yeah.
probably say that knowing that I saw these songs, and my checks were getting, was starting to increase as far as my BMI stuff. I knew it was on the
Yeah.
radio. I knew it was being played overseas.
Do you remember the moment you first heard yourself on the radio?
I sure do. I
What
was
what's
on
going on?
the Pulaski Bridge in Brooklyn, and it was on Funkmaster Flex, and he was dropping it was on You Used to Love Me. And I was just
Mm.
like, thank you, Jesus. Oh my God, thank you. People was looking at me like, I probably would stop, like, thank you, God. Thank you, God. I,
I
I
love
couldn't
that.
believe it. And I was like, oh, it just, it was a surreal feeling, but I was proud. It was certainly tears of joy. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
And I heard another thing. I don't know how true it is. I heard that you do not like those old videos of you singing gospel with
Well, no, no,
the
no, no, no. It's not that. It's there. It's history. It's me for sure. I just be laughing like, oh my God. I was just doing. I was everywhere. Not. I mean, I probably had just come from singing somewhere else. Me and Donovan, that's my road dog. He was playing for Hezekiah at the time. We probably just rushed from a Hezekiah gig or a worship and praise concert. Like, it just makes me laugh thinking of all the things that I was doing back then. Like, before any inkling of a record deal.
Yeah, you keep it though, and I love that they're out there for people to see your growth and where you come from. Um, because people are so tuned into you, we like to know where you've been before you arrived, and that's a clear indicator that you definitely were built for what you do now.
I was so shy. I was always, and I'm still pretty shy, but I mean, if I have to do a performance, it's certainly eons away from just being afraid to do anything. But I mean, back then I was just so shy.
So
Like,
that's so funny to me because I want to talk about this dichotomy between you being shy, right? And then I always compare, and I think you've probably heard me say this or seen me write this about your voice going from a little lamb to the roar of a lion. How do you go from being this shy person to having these powerhouse vocals and being able to deliver soul stirring performances? Like how?
well, I think developing that comfort as a live performer, number one. And when I say perform, obviously I'm not, choreography is not my thing. Everybody knows that. But I mean, just being comfortable on stage and wanting to, just feel the audience and vice versa. A
Hmm.
lot of that has to do with me developing that by being in the studio. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Because even in the studio, I'd be all dark. I want all the lights out. I always say, like, if there's another artist or somebody involved that's not in my normal cipher of being in the studio, I'm like, well, could you go outside? Because I just, I like to just be able to let loose and make mistakes and all of that
Yeah,
stuff. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And I don't know. I'm just very conscious of it. But I'm more comfortable in the studio, or was for a very long time, more comfortable in the studio because that is my place to do that, hash things out and fix things, and I can, the magic of recording. So yeah, being in the studio for so many years, and that being just something that he shut up. I mean, Ray's still talking. I'm not even gonna look down there no more. That certainly helped to build up my uh, ability and my comfort on stage. I mean, I knew I couldn't be like that forever. Like, you can't be trying to be running around here with 20 people in your crew, in your travel crew, and you getting up there just doing like this. You certainly
yeah,
won't command no nice money doing that. So
yeah.
I really had no choice.
When did you start, or you learned that it was a thing to include your mistakes in your recordings? Because that's like now a thing of yours that your fans love. When you leave like raw things in the edit.
Um, I mean, definitely it was on my first album for sure,
Hmm.
because there was a lot of that. But then a lot of the times, like, especially if it's something like, for example, one thing that comes to mind at the end on Fall in Love, I was like, all right, like, that
I remember
song
I asked you
is
about that at your
so
book signing.
long, and it seemed like
I
Puff,
asked you what
he
happened.
kept adding sections, like, oh, now is it two bridges in there? Like, the songs back then was so, I'm like, bro, why? Like, it should have been over already, like 3 hooks ago. That's why I was so tired of ad-libbing, like, all right, like, I'm done. Like, I mean, and I felt that way, so I probably told him to keep it on here, like, and because when I played it back for Puff, I wanted him to hear that part. Because there was a time very early on when I stopped letting him come to my sessions before I
Mm,
was done. Because
okay.
he'd come in and all of his opinions and da da da. I'm like, bro, I'm not done yet. Let me finish. Like, matter of fact, I'm gonna call you when I'm done from now on. So yeah, I wanted him to hear that on there, so that's why I kept it on that one.
How are you feeling about Prove It? The 21 Savage and Summer Walker sampling.
Well,
Go ahead.
it's funny because I on my most recent couple of BMI statements, that is the biggest earning record on there. So shout out to 21 Savage and Summer Walker. What
And
up,
it's
Steve?
something about the sound of your voice that at least for me, and I think probably I can speak for all the other faithfuls. We can tell your voice. You could be singing the background of the background of the background, and we're going to hear you. And you your voice adds a element of serenity to any music that you apply it to. Um, the same thing. It's funny, like my friend now. I met her some years ago, Natika Hemingway. She was one of the writers for Superstar, and we were sitting in one of my friends' living room, and I know we were talking about Usher, and then I was talking about, oh yeah, that song that Faith singing background on, and she was like, yeah, I wrote that song. I was like, you didn't write that song. She was like, oh yeah, I wrote that song.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, I had to do my research and I had to look her up, and yeah, she was one of the writers for the song. And I was adamant because I think before then somebody was trying to argue that it wasn't you, and I was like, no. I was like, that's Faith's vocals. Can you tell me how you came to be on that song? Because I've heard from all the other artists that were involved, but how did you get to be on that song?
Mm-hmm. 1 second. What up, Peekaboo, Rufus Black? Shout out to Donnell, one of my other favorite faithfuls. But Superstar. It's funny because I don't know how. At first I didn't know how I ended up on it because I actually Dre and Vidal from who were with Touch of Jazz back in the day. They were in
Hmm.
LA working, and I got a call, or maybe they sent word to Ty. I think Ty and I were married at the time, that they
Hmm.
wanted me to come by where they were working at, and they were playing these songs, and they just asked me. It was really just a real random, humble, can you lay this? I don't know that I even knew at the time that it was coming out. It might have been that they were just doing some songs and they were getting some songs on Usher's project. I don't know if the song was already chosen. And so I just
Hmm.
did the vocals to the bridge. But the next thing I knew, it was on the radio, child. And I sure knew that was me on it. And I was like, hold up. Like, now, we ain't, you know what I mean? We ain't thing for that.
Yeah,
So, but they worked it out. But yeah, it was on the
yeah,
radio
yeah.
before, because I didn't know it was actually already, pitched or accepted for, his project. So.
Do you, so I always had this question. These are little questions that I have just from me. So and I know with you working out, you had a back injury. How does that work with you with that injury and working out? Is
It's,
that a hindrance or can you
well,
work around it?
that back issue is still very real.
Hmm.
But over the years, it's affects like my hips now. But I just started seeing this osteopathic doctor, and I'm telling you, I feel like it's something like spiritual with him, because I saw him one time and I
Hmm.
hadn't felt like barely any of the pains that I feel when I sleep, in my hips and my butt and my back. Like, I don't know what
Wow.
he did. I ain't get on any machine, but he worked it out. So thankful, because I never really delved so deep into it. I was moving around to different states
Hmm.
and, might do a massage or a acupuncture, but I never really found a doctor that I went to that I felt was really making it better, outside of the other stuff I was doing. So
And did they actually remove all the glass? Is all of it removed?
from what I know, yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I had the, now, I had to have another surgery because when the accident first happened, they never did an x-ray, so they just sewed me up with the window still in my back. And then I traveled back home to New York, and I knew, Cheryl was helping me, like, with my take care of the wound. And I'm like, something don't feel right. We went to the hospital in Jersey, and they were like, they did an x-ray. And when I got those the glass in a jar, when I finally went to court to take it, oh my
Hmm.
goodness, huge thick
Oh my
long
goodness.
pieces of glass, like, storefront, not a window at your house,
Plate glass. That's
like
like serious
plate
glass.
glass. And it was thick, and I'm like, thank you God that I'm alive, that I can walk, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because it was right in the middle, right on my spine, at my lower back. So yeah, I came out of it. So after I, settled the lawsuit against the city and the club,
Mhm.
and the police officer that pushed me through the window for peanuts, I said, it wasn't really worth it. I'm okay. I'm alive. I can walk. So I'm just gonna let it go. Oh, shut up. You know what, DeRay? I knew he was going to be in there talking about acting tough. I was not acting tough, actually. I was standing very humbly to the side, trying not to bring notice to the fact that I was me, actually. I was standing off to the side. So the
Yeah,
officer
and they
was
wanted
way
to
out
lump
of
you in with the crowd,
it.
correct?
I was not with the crowd at
No,
all. Yeah, I was.
no, they wanted you to be with the crowd.
He just was telling me that I couldn't stand where I was standing, but that wasn't
Oh,
true. I wasn't in front of the
oh,
club. I was like two businesses away, waiting for
oh,
the rest, like Cheryl and whoever was with us at the time, to come so we could all walk in together. But before they even
wow.
made it there, I was through the window and had handcuffs on.
So you have an event coming up. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? What you
Oh yeah.
can?
Um, Writers Room is actually gearing up for our inaugural gala. It's going to be on September 27th at the Newark Museum of Art. We're partnering with the city of Newark. It's going to be a great night of food, entertainment. We give honorees. We're honoring a few people within our community, meaning the autism and special needs community. What else? I know I'm in a lot because I'm trying to remember. I should have a paper with points. What else? What else? Some surprise entertainment of the guest host is going to be. But yeah, some of my faithfuls have already hit me about it. We didn't post the tickets yet on the website because we're still trying to figure out this ticket tailor thing. Like, we got everything ready,
Okay.
the invites, the layout, the sponsorship package, but Ticket Tailor is giving us issues with connecting to the scan code on our website. So we're working that out. Shout out to Lark and Loyal on our IT committee that for Writers Room that have been hashing out all of those kinks. And shout out to the entire Writers Room board as well,
Mhm.
because we just did a event in Newark at 13th Avenue School. It was a brunch for mothers, with kids in the Newark Board of Education who are in the autism schools with autism programs. And one of our board members, Alyssa Rawls from Jersey, she put it together because she's a administrator in the Board of Education up there as well. So shout out to everybody who helped and donated. Like our board members came through, and I think the mothers felt really honored and special. So I'm glad that Writers Room could make that happen with them.
Thanks for tuning in to My Husband is My Best Friend.